We're going to get the show started today. For those of you that don't know me, we see a few new faces, a lot of wonderful, usual downtown suspects here. My name's Todd Ogden. I am the president of the Downtown Lincoln Association. Thank you. Yes. Appreciate it. Took over in June for Terry Euland and appreciate his many years of service at Downtown Lincoln. And I think on behalf of our entire staff and board, we can only hope to continue the momentum that downtown has had over this last decade and move on to the new decade. So I am a lifelong Lincoln resident, lifelong Lincolnite, went to Lincoln East High School, went to the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, and grew up in downtown Lincoln after that. I love downtown Lincoln, and I love all of you here. It's great having you here. And before I introduce Dr. Barker here that's going to talk today, wanted to make a quick note, just mention that the last 48 hours for me, personally, as some of you may know, have been kind of weird. And with that said, I think I'll try to be as broad as possible here, and I think it fits in with our theme today a little bit. Dr. Marco Barker is going to talk today, and he is a relatively new Vice Chancellor of Diversity and Inclusion. And it's an important topic. We had our downtown master plan recently completed, and one thing we're really focusing on downtown is having an inclusive atmosphere. Our downtown's growing, we have the surrounding neighborhoods around us, and it's really important to be inclusive when you're talking about it and being accepting. And I think in light of a lot of stuff that's happened lately, I think that's just the goal moving forward is to be kind to everybody and being as inclusive as possible and treat everybody with the fairness and equality that you want to be treated. And that's our goal moving forward. So with that said, Dr. Marco Barker, if you want to come on up, nobody can introduce Marco better than himself, I've heard. So we'll let him do that here moving forward. And we really appreciate having him here. Love having a University of Nebraska Lincoln employee talk about this wonderful subject. So appreciate it, Marco.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Do you want the wireless mic or do you want to be up there?
Yeah. Good afternoon. Now, I know I'm following Todd. I know he's a long-time resident of Lincoln, but good afternoon. That's wonderful. It is just my pleasure to be in front of you today and to give you just a short sort of synopsis of how I arrived at Lincoln. I come to you by way of Arkansas, so I'm a Arkansan, born and raised, and I've lived in a number of places from St. Louis to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to Durham, North Carolina, most recently Salt Lake City, Utah, and then now I'm a proud resident of Lincoln, Nebraska. And so I'm just thrilled to be a part of the Husker family. I am thrilled to be a part of this community. So looking forward to engaging you today. To get us started, I wanted to just thank a few people today who made this possible. Certainly one to the Downtown Lincoln Association and to the executive team, the executive board, for your invitation. Absolutely, I want to thank, I'm trying to see where they are, but Maggie and Katie, let's give them a round of applause for their work. Absolutely, thanking them both. They've been so instrumental in really getting me ready for today's experience. And then lastly, she's not here, but I would be remiss if I didn't thank my UNL colleague, Dr. Karen Castlebaum, for making the connection and getting me connected with this amazing organization. So certainly thanks to Dr. Castlebaum. Absolutely. So, in preparing for today, I was being really thoughtful about what I would say and know that I really do consider it an honor and a privilege to be able to be in front of you today and discussing and sharing my thoughts and reflections about what I think it means to connect the future and being and really visioning downtown and how that connects with aspects of diversity and inclusion. And so as we think about space, right? Like, so we think about the space that we occupy. I think we start to think about the spirit of community, the spirit of connecting, what it means to honor where we are, the land on which we gather. And so I think it's especially important because when you think about downtowns, I mean, the way in which downtowns develop their identity is often based on its geographical footprint, right? So you know that you're downtown based on the geographical footprint, the land that it occupies. And so I think because of that, it's even more important that we make sure, and I would like to begin this summit by doing a land acknowledgement and a real acknowledgement of the First Nations, the First Peoples, and really the first caretakers of the land today. And this is something that I incorporate a lot in my own practice when we have formal gatherings at the university, because I do think it's important that anytime that we do gather people together and particularly utilize the land on which we are gathered, it's really important to do that. And so I want to share with you my own personal land acknowledgement and would just ask before we move on, as you sit here today, to be reflective and thoughtful about those who first occupied this land. And so when we talk about land acknowledgements, I think it's important to know that being able to speak truth and have acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and really connecting with people across barriers of heritage and difference. And so we must begin this effort to acknowledge what was buried by honoring the truth. And so we cannot ignore that we do stand on ancestral land, particularly the land of the Sioux and Pawnee nations, particularly where we're located today. And so I want to pay respects, and I hope that we all can pay respects to the elders, past and present, along with the descendants of the many other nations on which we are, nations and tribes on which and whose land we often travel or gather, build, and use every single day. And so we should take this and certainly take other moments to consider and remind ourselves of the legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that's impacted indigenous communities, and know that all of that history certainly brings us to this moment, to here today. And so I would certainly encourage you, as you are able to make time to learn more about land acknowledgements. I think, again, they're really important in how we bring greater awareness to the history of First Peoples. Certainly being in Nebraska, I think our context and where we're located is really important. So if you are interested, I know I certainly continually work towards really challenging my own notions and my own bias around what it meant to have early people, the First Peoples, a part of this. And so if you are interested, there's a great resource on Together We Create that's through the U.S. Department of Arts and Culture website. And so you can see that here at usdac.us/nativeland. So, full disclosure, so I was asked to do this talk probably a few weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, and I was asked to give my topic early on. I have to tell you that since providing it, I've probably changed what I plan to say probably 10 times already since then. And so, but I promise that I will try and remain somewhat in the ballpark of what the original printed title, because I want to really honor what was presented to all of you. And so, as I started thinking about what today's conversation can really be about and really be around, I started thinking about exactly why is diversity and inclusion so important to the conversations when we start talking about the life and the future of downtown, the life and the future of downtown Lincoln. And so that then led me to the question about then why are downtowns so important? And so, I come from a very small town in Arkansas. Our downtown was probably 5 blocks wide, 3 blocks long. Maybe we had 3 traffic lights, I think, a couple of stop signs, and the tallest building was probably our 3-story courthouse, and that was downtown. And so in my small town in Arkansas, no one lived downtown. It was mostly the courthouse and a few buildings. And so I began thinking again, why are downtowns important? And so I did some research. on why downtowns are important. And I really appreciated seeing some of the words that some of you were sharing earlier about when you start thinking about downtown, those feelings or ideas that come to mind. People had things like being down, being vibrant, connecting. All those are really important. So I did, again, some little research. So first I came across an artist who talked about downtown. And if you know the artist, I encourage you to sort of chime in too. So the artist talks about when you're alone and life is making you lonely, you can always go. Absolutely. When you've got worries, all the noise and the hurry, seems to help, I know. Y'all are really great. I mean, this is a great group. So Petula Clark, you know the song. So the song goes on to say, you may find somebody kind to help and understand you, someone who's just like you and needs a gentle hand to guide them along. So maybe I'll see you there. We can forget all our troubles, forget all our cares, so go downtown. Things will be great when you're downtown. Don't wait a minute more, downtown. Everything is waiting for you, right? Does that describe Lincoln? So we have to be reflective about that. Now, if you're not a music lover, I can appreciate that, and you're more driven by research, there was a 2018 study commissioned by the International Downtown Association on why strong downtowns are important. And so there were a number of reasons, about 5 reasons they identified. So one of those talked about the economy, and we've heard tons and tons of research around how downtowns can really drive the economy. So whether we're talking about the tax base, so there's a number of sales tax, hotel taxes, assessment, property taxes, certainly companies that are downtown providing job opportunities can be, in addition to actual physical plant and how commercial space can also drive revenue and drive economy. The second item was around vibrancy. So again, I appreciated that someone or a few people talked about vibrant, describing Lincoln downtown. And so part of vibrancy is around the number of uses you can have around downtown. And so here in Lincoln, you can throw axes and get soul food right next door. You can catch a movie or grab drinks with someone. You can open a bank account, grab amigos, and get to your physics class all downtown. So there's retail, food and beverage, hotels, shopping, nightlife, like all these things sort of resonates with Clark's song about what it means to be downtown. The third item on this report talked about identity, which is we often, earlier I was talking with Todd about this space and his reason for selecting it as part of tonight's experience and how important it is to think about where we are. And so identity talks about that in the report. I want to quote what they listed around the importance of downtown and identity. And it says that that downtowns have intrinsic cultural significance, defining the region's brand. And so this is often done through buildings, architecture. I sort of start to think, what's the brand for Lincoln downtown? I know it can't only be corn. And so what is our brand? How do we describe who we are? How do we represent that, right? And so identity is so important to strong downtowns. It's also lived through our activities that we have and certainly our civic engagement. I think being the state's capital is also really important. The fourth item was around resilience. So strong downtowns have resilience. They're able to sort of maintain through shifts, right? So whether there are economic shifts, whether we see, whether we're shocked by environmental or social changes downtown, strong downtowns are able to still work through that. And so it's part of its tenacity to have multi-use, to certainly have multi-purpose activities throughout the city. The fifth one, which is really important and which is why I think I'm here today speaking with you, is around inclusion. Strong downtowns understand and realize the range of people who will interact and be engaged in the city, in downtown. Strong downtowns typically have high diversity. So whether we're talking about gender, whether we're talking about ethnic or racial diversity, or whether we're talking about large numbers of millennials who are moving in, but the patrons that utilize downtown are certainly vast and wide and represent a number of identities and a number of interests. So I think as we start thinking about these 5 concepts, it's absolutely imperative that we see that the economy, the vibrancy, the identity, resilience, inclusion, all those intersect and really interact in very interesting ways. And so it has to force us to begin to question, how interconnected are they? So we can't talk about the identity of a place, like who we are as a downtown, without understanding that when we start talking about who we are, we have to get perspectives from all people. That my Lincoln, Nebraska is not just my Lincoln, Nebraska and how I see it. It's about how others see it and how we make meaning out of that together. We have to realize that if we want to be vibrant and attract new people to our city and to downtown, it relies on us thinking about our economy and thinking about, again, how we are living our vibrancy. So, these have all been referenced, and some of you may be familiar with Blueprint Nebraska, a report that came out, and certainly one that pointed to the importance of diversity and inclusion being part of driving our economy. This report was certainly developed by the co-chairs Lance Fritz with the Union Pacific and Owen Palm with 21st Century. And so first, let me just say this. I want to be really clear that doing diversity and inclusion work is really important for the sake of just knowing that people matter. We often get into all the different reasons why diversity and inclusion is so key to driving our economy. But for me, at the core, we have to remember that diversity and inclusion is really important because people matter. Right? People want to feel a sense of belonging. And so I want to make sure and start there. However, in this report, they also speak to the importance that if we're going to attract businesses, if we're going to attract attention to the greatness that we have here in Lincoln, part of that has to be how we think about diversity and inclusion and being a place that certainly welcomes others. And so I know and I believe that downtown Lincoln can absolutely be a leader and a role model in how we practice diversity and inclusion. I also think, downtowns are so well positioned in our community to really serve as the heart and brain of Lincoln, right? So I'm going to use this really, this real biology metaphor, but the heart and brains. And so if we think about sort of our city as an organism, right? So downtown is being able that we begin to connect through arteries. Or if we're talking about the brain, we also connect through these neurons. But it all comes back to the center, right? The both neural center and circulatory center. And so downtown should be really positioned to share information outside of downtown in the same way that we're gathering information, right? So we are this epicenter that's able to both share out, but also receive back information about what's happening across our city. And I think that it's even more important for us to do this. And we know that it's important because we are, again, the capital city. And so having our city-state government here, having corporate headquarters located here, and having our state's only public research land-grant institution all means something for downtown Lincoln. And so I hope we don't forget that. And so that's why I feel like this two-way communication, this idea about being interdependent, that what drives us in terms of downtown Lincoln is not only driven by our core group that's here, but it is truly driven by what's happening much more broader in our city. And so we have to be interconnected. As a matter of fact, there is a quote that comes to mind. Next slide. So this is Pauli Murray, and I mentioned before that I've lived in a number of places, and one of those places was Durham, North Carolina. And in Durham, there's a mural of Pauli Murray, and to tell you a little bit about her, Pauli Murray was a civil rights leader from North Carolina, and actually she, in the 1930s, led a campaign to seek admittance into the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She was denied acceptance into the university, and so later, I think their first black student who was admitted was in 1951. However, Pauli Murray went on to attend Howard University, a historically black college and university in Washington, D.C. She then got accepted into Harvard Law, which was great. However, she was turned down once they realized that Pauli was actually a woman. And so she was unable to attend Harvard Law School, but went on to attend UC Berkeley Law School, not too shabby for her. And so in 1977, Pauli Murray actually became the first African-American woman to become an Episcopal priest. And so she is an activist, a feminist, a priest, a poet, in so many ways. And so she has a quote that's part of this mural. And the quote, next slide, the quote says that true community is based upon equality, mutuality, reciprocity, and it affirms the richness of individual diversity as well as the common human ties that bind us together. And so I think this quote really suggests this notion about what it means to bridge. What does it mean to connect with others from whether it's on an individual level or whether it's others from different communities? And so it forces us to really think about how do we approach this connection in ways that lead to respect and appreciation for others. I think this quote also really emphasizes collaboration and not necessarily domination, right? And it also means that how do we restore equality and equity into our communities? And so I know that sounds easy. I also know that we have a very interesting history in the United States in that we've not always been good at bridging or good at connecting with others. We have had systems that were built on and relied on, in some cases, displacing individuals, intruding or controlling, devaluing, segregating others, erasing, modifying, and even gentrifying people, places, and cultures throughout our history. And so doing this, I think, is extremely important for us to be thoughtful about just what our history represents. And I think that we have to be thoughtful about that sometimes these very same systems are the systems that are present and that also influence our own city. And so whether we're talking about who has access to quality housing, health care, equal pay, access to education, that's something that at UNL we're always thinking through. Who's in leadership roles and who's in public office, right? And so being reflective about these occurrences, we have to be mindful and thoughtful that history has played a part in this. And so I believe that as leaders, some of you are really actively engaged in our community as citizens, teachers, role models, certainly business people who are here. I think that we all have a real opportunity to increase our understanding about these systems and to demonstrate what it means to make decisions that counteract, disrupt, eliminate, and I hope certainly shift systems to be more inclusive. And so, we know that Lincoln has a number of people who are part of our community and that make up our diversity. And so whether that's on an individual level or whether it's more community-based, I would tell you that all the research, time and time again, points back to that diversity, the growing diversity in our cities. We're going to see a rise in millennials. There's actually research that shows, believe it or not, so just hold on here, but millennials will outnumber, in terms of adults, our baby boomers, right? And so millennials are going to be our future leaders of our cities. And so being prepared of how we prepare them to be inclusive leaders are extremely important. We also know that we are seeing a real increase in women in leadership. There are still gaps in terms of equity pay that we have to address, as well as who's leading our organizations and how we ensure that women are positioned to be able to lead. We also know that there are occurrences and issues in our city around race, and race discrimination, around lack of rights for LGBTQ community members that we know can really impede our city's ability to be able to be a place where everyone feels a sense of place in Lincoln, Nebraska, and especially downtown Lincoln. And so, with the growing diversity and needs of our community, I think we have to, again, go back to this idea that we're all interconnected. That, again, just like the brain and the heart, that we need to be thoughtful about how do we extend to other members of our community. And so I want to share another quote from Cesar Chavez, an activist and civil rights leader who did a lot of work around Latinx civil rights, and certainly he was also co-founder of the National Farm Workers Association. And so the quote says that we cannot seek achievement for ourselves and forget about progress and prosperity for our community. Our ambitions must be broad enough to include aspirations and needs of others for their sakes and for our own, right? So this ideal about moving away from this real individualization that can certainly get in the way of our common good. And so that means that downtown has to consider how our decisions impact each other, both directly and indirectly. So, to the sort of grandiose conclusion of, okay, now, Marco, I've heard what you've had to say. It all sounds interesting. What can we do? And so how do we effectively and thoughtfully build and strengthen our community around diversity and inclusion? It means that our practices, our actions, our decisions must be appreciative and reflective of diverse perspectives and include others. It means that, so in the business sector, there's this term called cultural intelligence or cultural quotient, often referred to as CQ. And CQ really emphasizes this ideal about how do we know how to work with people from different cultures in ways that leverage their talents and really bring them into the decision-making process, right? So how do we have higher cultural intelligence as a downtown community? And so, I would say that we must be leaders and citizens who aim to understand the dynamics of difference, how and what that looks like in our communities, the histories of our city. We have to be thoughtful about the people who occupy our downtown and the land that we're on. This means that we have to avoid that just our story is the story, right? And what's the story of others? And sometimes there are stories that we've not heard that's gone unseen and unheard. And so how do we make room to hear those stories as well? And so I would say that to really understand differences, it's really important that as organizations, do you have a clear understanding about what diversity means for you as an individual, but also for your own organization? And so at UNL, we're actually defining diversity. This is our definition. And essentially, we see diversity as differences. I mean, at this real core level, a number of differences. Those can be both individual differences, but certainly group and social differences. So, if we were doing a poll, how many people, don't raise your hand, but really being thoughtful about if you were asked to define diversity, people typically fall into three categories. There are some individuals who can define it and they know it well. There are others who typically don't want to define it, don't call on me, I have no idea what to say, and that's okay. Then there are others that can start talking about diversity, but go down what I call the tunnel of the unknown. You start talking about it, and you just keep going. And you're talking, and you have no idea how you got to the place where you are. And so being able to have really clear definitions and a really clear understanding about what diversity is really critical and really key to making this a priority. We must be leaders and citizens who examine our own biases, our blind spots, our points of reference. There's a ton of research on what it means to be thoughtful about your own unconscious bias. Our brains are hardwired to process input really rapidly. I mean, we don't have a lot of time to make sense out of all the information that we actually have to intake. And so we often make quick decisions or form quick meanings about people and places and situations and what's happening. Sometimes our brain works too fast, and we make these associations really quickly. Now, in some cases, making these associations really quickly can really save our lives. And so if you're in the road and a car is barreling towards you, you don't think twice about getting out of the way. I mean, that's the way that bias is working really great. In some cases, we're making judgment calls about people or places or situations really quickly without really understanding the source of that, right? And so being mindful about those blind spots. We must be leaders and citizens who develop a strategy for putting into practice what we're learning. So actually having a strategy. This diversity work just doesn't happen happenstance. I mean, we really have to work on it. So that means that we have to understand and how do we build and make it critical to our organizations, that we have to create a work environment or for us, an environment where people learn and work, that they appreciate where they are. And that we're ensuring that we are creating cultures that are not just transactional, but also really transformational. And so this type of movement calls for us to develop practices that may counter the system that I referenced earlier. And we have to move away from, it's the way that we've always done things. right? And so we have to be open to different ways of doing things. So at UNL, we're trying to do this, and some of you may have read about it. We are formulating a strategy right now called the End 2025. And if you had a chance to read a bit about it, really it's our vision of where we want to be in the next 5 years. And so part of that 2025 draft right now talks about that we are very clear that in the next 5 years, we want to move and make inclusive excellence and diversity a priority for us. And so the notion of inclusive excellence, and again, I won't go through all of this, you can certainly read it, but the heart of it is that we see diversity and inclusion imperative and critical to every single thing that we do. I mentioned before that for us, access is really important, but also ensuring that every single person, whether it's a student, whether it's our employees, visitors, fans on game day, which are 90,000 of them, we want to make sure that every single person feels like they belong and can be successful at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And I hope that that's something that each and every one of you have for your workplaces. Like, how do you ensure that every single person feels like they belong there and that they can be successful? And so to do that, you really have to sit down and think about a real clear strategy about what could that look like for us. And so I will leave you with this, that we must be leaders and citizens who are accountable, right? So are we examining outcomes? Are we reviewing our actions? How those actions are leading to consequences that were maybe not intended? Are we becoming the place where individuals, again, feel valued, a sense of belonging? Are we making progress in diversifying our workforce? Are we examining healthcare issues, access to housing? Are there individuals who are charged in your organizations thinking about diversity and inclusion? Right? How are they being supported? Based on those answers, any one or either all of those answers, I think it definitely informs you where you are in developing a strategy. And so I want to leave you with, there's a book called The Soul of Leadership by Deepak Chopra. And it talks about there are 7 key needs that groups have. And so I want to share those with you to be thoughtful about how diversity and inclusion connects with each of these. The 7 needs are safety and security, achievement and success, cooperation, nurturing belonging, creativity and progress, moral values, and spiritual fulfillment. And so I hope that know that the University of Nebraska-Lincoln certainly sees ourselves as part of the downtown environment, part of this organization, part of this community. And I hope that you will join us in what it means to truly create inclusive environments and what it means to begin to engage in inclusive actions. Thank you. Okay, so I have time for questions. Time for questions.
Anybody have any questions? You can speak in front of it.
Questions. Go ahead. I think the question was, can I go in more detail about our work with the End 2025 plan around diversity and inclusion? Yes, happy to. So part of what we are examining and beginning, so I will couch this in saying that we're in the draft stage right now, but there are some key areas that we are thinking through and how we realize what diversity and inclusion looks like. So one of those areas is around climate. So how do we get a sense about what are the experiences that people are having on our campus? And so we're looking at and we're hoping to be able to make part of that a climate survey for the university specifically. There was one done for the system, which was helpful in getting us started and thinking about some of these issues, but could there be something gained from doing one particularly for our area? We're also looking at our diversity and hiring practices. And so understanding the laws that we have in our state, doesn't prevent us from being able to say, how do we communicate our commitment to diversity and inclusion? And how do we ensure that people who are looking at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln for employment also sees our commitment and believes that we want to be a place that's creating an environment that everyone feels supported and feels a sense of belonging. And so, how do we make that part of our process? How do we help people be really thoughtful about the talent development and talent acquisition process as it pertains to diversity and inclusion? So that's one of the things that's drafted. One of the other pieces is also around student recruitment. So again, how do we be thoughtful and mindful about not only how we engage students from various different backgrounds, but what does support look like for our campus? And so I think we do a great job at supporting students. We can certainly always do better. And so those are some of the highlights. There's some other key areas we're also very interested in terms of the overall student experience. What could it mean for the University of Nebraska, for the university to be the place where every single student that leaves our university are equipped to go into diverse work settings and be successful, right? So again, what does that look like? And so those are just a few examples of what those would be. Part of the plan is going to be us. So right now we're moving to a phase where we're going to be talking with members on our campus community. So for us, there's been a long process of building up to this. And as important as it is to think about having the right goals and the right aims, is also ensuring that we're engaging our entire organization and getting their feedback. So that's sort of in our next stage where we are with it. Question? Other questions? I can sing. It's a whole lounge setting. I love the atmosphere. Downtown, right? I can sing.
Well, it looks like everybody seems extremely pleased, and let's give a round of applause to Dr. Barker.
Thank you.
Now. We really appreciate the discussion, Dr. Barker, and moving forward, our goal is to have some workshops to talk about this for businesses that may be interested, so please let us know. I'm over here sitting on the University of Nebraska wing, and it's pretty important to see the direction that the university's headed, and being connected to downtown's vitally important for both parties. And we've loved having several meetings, especially after the master plan and what they've conducted here. And we have Brooke and Emily here, and so many staff at the university understand the importance of downtown and the university to work together, and as we talk about inclusion and including both of these neighborhoods. And we are a neighborhood, and we're in a neighborhood together, and there's so many things we can do to bridge that gap and bring us all together, and we're really excited to have some initiative move forward with that. So again, I appreciate everything you did for us, Dr. Barker, and appreciate the University of Nebraska for supporting us with this presentation today. And with that said, I now want to introduce our next speaker. Every year we have our nominating committee select among hundreds of wonderful potential candidates for Impact Award winners. And not only do we nominate these award winners, and we're going to announce them today, one thing we did is we moved the award section a little bit around from what we used to do. We used to not have a keynote, and we used to have all the award winners come up and give an acceptance speech. And in the 12 years that I've done this, I think 2 people have wanted to actually give an acceptance speech. So now,
I was one of them.
And Randy was one of them, so that's why he's stuck here.
I was not at all. I hated that so much.
So we are going to announce the winners, and Mr. Randy Hawthorne, Mr. Downtown Lincoln right here, who a lifelong resident of downtown Lincoln, and again, talking about inclusion here with what Nonprofit Hub does and Foundry, and Foundry really hosts a lot of unique organizations to downtown, and there's no better person than Randy to kind of exemplify what it means to include a lot of people downtown. And Randy's been great, and he was also missing at the committee meeting, so he's going to talk here for to announce the Impact Award winners. So with that said, Randy is going to announce you, and feel free once you're announced to come on up, stand here. I'll give you the award. Just stand up, and once we're done, everybody here will get one good picture of all the award winners together. So come up and stand by me. I'll give you your award, and then we'll wait till this is done, and this should go fairly quickly. With that said, on to Randy.
So I'm sorry. I have prepared remarks that are going to last about 25 minutes. So, no, I joke. I'm ready for that dinner on the backside of that the agenda. So, but truly, I have been a downtown resident since I went to UNL from a small town, Trumbull, Nebraska. Woohoo! Population 200, and have lived downtown for 21 years as of October. So this has been my home, and I love it, and I'm so excited as we start revealing these award winners to see how much just keeps happening downtown. And I feel like in recent years it's been even more accelerated. I remember one of my first meetings after moving downtown was a committee meeting in Cecil Stewart's newly renovated typewriter building, and we were talking about the downtown grocery store 21 years ago. We finally have it. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. We're going to start with the 2019 Downtown Impact Award for Significant Residential Development. That goes to the Stack Lofts. So Matt and Jane, please join us up here on the stage. Matt and Jane Stricker are owners of Threads and Footloose and Fancy. They built Skyward this year with the $4 million residential development of the Stack Lofts, preserving the 1921 two-story limestone facade of the former Swanson Russell headquarters. The Strickers built a new 5-story building right behind, expanding the P Street skyline and adding 27 luxury lofts that are now completely leased, unfortunately, because I tried to get in there, to new downtown residents. So congratulations. All right. So the next award is a special one that recognizes the organization's commitment to improving downtown Lincoln while also working as a successful public-private partnership. The 2019 Downtown Impact Award for Downtown Community Leadership goes to Centerpointe. So Topher Hansen and the Centerpointe team, come on up. So Centerpointe was one of the first programs in the nation to offer integrated substance use and mental health care in the 80s. Today, they provide more than 35 programs in the areas of treatment, rehabilitation, housing, and crisis response. More than 50% of the people are homeless when they come into outpatient services at Centerpointe, and 2,877 unduplicated persons were served in the 2017-18 fiscal year. This year, Downtown Lincoln is honored to recognize Centerpointe for their incredible work in the community and the holistic approach to helping those who need it most.
Thank you, Randy. I'm going to say a couple words. So I'm going to be the third person that talks because I can't resist a mic and a spotlight. It's just in my genes. Over 3,000 people last year, so it grows more every year. But one of the things I want to note that's going on here tonight, we've focused our business on health and well-being as opposed to deficits of people coming in sick and ill, and they know they're sick and ill. We don't need to tell them that. And so we turn that lens to positivity to talk about their health and their well-being and how we can get them there, even though they're dealing with trauma and untreated mental illness and substance use and homelessness and many other things. And so we've tried to turn the lens that way. But what this is about is downtown Lincoln turning the lens to the kind of performance businesses are interested in today that the Business Roundtable just unveiled and told us about, which is if you're going to be a successful business, then what you have to do is not only focus on your customer, the consumer, the patient, the client, the whatever you call them, we call them people, weird, huh? To the people that you're serving, but you also have to focus on your staff, you have to focus on the community in which you live, and you have to focus on the environment so you leave your campground better than what you found it. And if you focus on those four things, then what you have is a business that thrives, a positive impact, and a successful environment that all works together. So congratulations to DLA and this work, and to the community, the board, Terry, Todd, the board, the community that supports this for reaching out this way and creating this integration of neighborhoods, as you put it, to be a successful environment. That's what it is, and we thank you a lot. We feel like you're a leader in this, and we appreciate your offer. Thanks.
The next award honors a young entrepreneur who is growing a business in downtown. And the 2019 Downtown Young Entrepreneur Award goes to, and I only know him as Sultan. Come on up, Sultan. So Sultan opened the Sultan's Kite in October 2010 and has seen steady success ever since. Now also with a second restaurant location at 14th and Pine Lake, serving Mediterranean cuisine until the early hours of the morning every weekend on O Street is not always an easy task. But Sultan is dedicated to his business and loves to encourage Lakenites to eat like a sultan. And he may or may not know my order. The next award recognizes a business or organization that is committed to bringing diversity to downtown Lincoln through community-oriented events. The 2019 Downtown Cultural Leadership Award goes to the Nebraska History Museum. As Amanda makes her way, the Nebraska History Museum strives to create a positive and accepting atmosphere in downtown Lincoln, especially through their annual Lincoln Unites event. Lincoln Unites is a multicultural celebration centered around welcoming refugees and immigrants to Lincoln. The Nebraska History Museum celebrated Lincoln Unites' 4th year in May, inviting the community to celebrate diversity by sharing food, music, and experiences. Trying to trip me up with words. Our penultimate award for tonight is the Significant Downtown Development, which goes to the Kindler Hotel. So as Kathy Kindler and team make their way to the stage, the Kindler Hotel opened in August and changed the scope of luxury accommodations in downtown Lincoln. Owned and developed by Nick and Brooke Castaneda, the Kindler's breathtaking interiors blend the spirit of Lincoln's heritage with phenomenal architecture and the creative spirit and sculptures of Ken Kindler, the Nebraska welder, industrial artist, and father of Brooke Castaneda. The Kindler was positioned itself to create a boutique hotel experience you'd find in any major city, but celebrates its role as part of Lincoln's downtown fabric. And our final award of the evening is a special one that recognizes a commitment to downtown Lincoln in a way that benefits our diverse urban community and exemplifies what downtown Lincoln aspires to achieve, a thriving and cohesive downtown. The Urban Champion Award goes to our downtown health and fitness leaders, the Downtown YMCA, Lotus House of Yoga, and Fly Fitness. All y'all come up on stage. These 3 businesses not only work to benefit residents and employees of downtown Lincoln with various classes, memberships, and wellness support, but also work cohesively to bring their programming to the public via free outdoor classes at Tower Square. All right, now as we get a picture of all these wonderful award winners, please join me once again in congratulating them for all their wonderful and collective impact on downtown Lincoln. I don't know where the picture part is.
Colin up there already got your picture up there, so yeah, look at this wonderful group up there. Again, this is really cool seeing all of you up here and all the truly large impact you have made on downtown. So we really appreciate that. So again, thank you. And we're going to wind down the evening here. And as you know, we changed it up a little bit as well, where if you look on the back of your menu, there's some specials on there that some restaurants have given where you can use your downtown gift card tonight, or you could save it for later if you'd like. So we'd really appreciate to explore downtown after this event. Sultan's Kite isn't listed on a special on there, but the gift card is good at Sultan's Kite, so that's available tonight as well. And from what I hear, Sultan's Kite is in the top 5 of most used gift cards for our restaurant. So very cool, Sultan. So very popular. Thanks again for everybody coming out. We really appreciate this and appreciate all of you, and encourage you to enjoy your night in downtown Lincoln. Thank you.